Hello, this is Professor Robert Monroe. This presentation is on bribery for this week. The following week we will be dealing with corruption. I want to discuss some terms to begin with. Financial crimes and corruption are broad terms, and each one of the terms includes bribery. Financial crimes are crimes against property involving the unlawful conversion of the ownership of the property. Financial crimes may involve fraud, theft, tax evasion, bribery, and so forth. Corruption, the term corruption, is refers to a type of dishonest or unethical conduct by a person entrusted with a position of authority, often to acquire personal benefit. And of course, corruption may include a bribery. The term bribery can be defined as the offering, giving, receiving, or soliciting of any item of value to influence the actions of an official or other person in charge of a public or legal duty. There are many types of payments or favors that can constitute a bribery. Terms such as tip, gift, sop, perk, skim, favor, discount, waive fee ticket, free food, free ad, free trip, free tickets, sweetheart deal, get back, payback, funding, inflated sale of object or property, lucrative contract, donation, campaign contribution, fundraiser, sponsorship or backing, higher paying job, stock options, secret commissions, or promotions are examples. One must be very careful of differing social and cultural norms when examining bribery. Expectations of when a monetary transaction is appropriate can differ from place to place. Certain countries, such as China, the culture includes acceptance of bribery. And today, bribery is estimated at approximately $3 billion. I want to go through the history of the legislation, national and international legislation on bribery. We begin in 1977 with the United States Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. This prohibited the bribery of foreign officials and required bookkeeping provisions. You will find this act at 15 United States Code 78 DD-1. It was amended, the act was amended in 1988 and again in 1998. If you go to the government website, you'll see a list of the enforcement action taken under this act. In 1993, the non-government organization Transparency International was established to combat cross-border corruption. And the organization played a role in the development and implementation of the OECD Convention on Combating Bribery of Foreign Public Officials. I encourage you to go to the Transparency International website, Transparency International, for their indexes of corruption. There's always been some controversy about the methodology they use to create the indices, but the reading is very interesting. If you carefully examine all their materials, you'll realize probably that corruption is almost everywhere. In 1997, the European Union adopted the Convention on the fight against corruption involving officials of the European communities or officials of member states of the European Union. On December 17, 1997, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, adopted the Convention on Combating Bribery of Foreign Public Officials in International Business Transactions. The convention came into force on February 15, 1999, and 41 nations have ratified it. In 1999, the Council of Europe promulgated a criminal law convention on corruption and a civil law convention on corruption. 37 nations ratified the criminal law convention on corruption that criminalized corruption in both public and private sectors. In 2003, the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime came into force on September 29, 2003. The convention consisted of Article 6 that requires signatory parties to criminalize money laundering and corruption, and Article 12 that required ratifying nations to create a legal foundation for the confiscation of criminal proceeds. 2003, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption of October 2003 required ratifying nations to criminalize the bribery of officials and concealment of proceeds. This convention, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, was the first global anti-corruption instrument. There are currently 180 signatories to it, and it also has provisions on asset recovery, which is extremely important in the fight against corruption. And 2003, the African Union's Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption was adopted. 2007, the World Bank with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime created the Stolen Asset Recovery, STAR, Stolen Asset Recovery Initiative, to encourage governments to sign and ratify the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and implement the convention. Recently, the OECD did an analysis of bribery, and they came to a number of interesting conclusions, some surprising, some not so surprising. One conclusion is that the bribery usually involves larger multinational corporations, not small or medium-sized companies. The four industrial sectors, business sectors, that featured the most bribery were the following: mining, construction, transportation, and finally, information and communication. I'll repeat those. Number one was mining, 2, construction, 3, transportation, 4, information and communications. 50% of the bribery cases involve senior management, and the bribes went largely to employees of state-owned enterprises, state-owned or state-controlled enterprises. The purpose of the bribes was to win public procurement contracts. The study showed that approximately there were $3 billion worth of bribes, and it was done primarily in rich nations. There is a perception that most bribes take place in less developed countries where public officials, employees are poorly paid. The study found that it was primarily in rich nations. So what can be done about corruption, particularly, bribery? There have been a number of recommendations. Obviously, a great deal of work has been done on legislation, national legislation, and international legislation, conventions. Certain persons have recommended that a company appoint in the context of America, a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act compliance officer. I'll repeat that. A Foreign Corrupt Practices Act compliance officer that has authority to investigate and make decisions. Another recommendation has been to include the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act terms in every contract. There's also a growing emphasis on not only law enforcement, but the development of good, clear international business standards. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, has been working on developing a certification regime, sort of a best practices for companies, and a management system to avoid, detect, and deal appropriately with the problems of bribes. So there's a major move to bring the private sector, business sector, into play in this difficult area. If you have any questions about anything I've said or about this issue, please contact me. My email is wwrlm1320@hotmail.com. wwrlm1320@hotmail.com. And my phone number is 352-246-9790. 352-246-9790. I'll be glad to talk to you. Have a great week.